On Tuesday, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman became the first finance minister to present 7 consecutive budget speeches, surpassing Morarji Desai's record of 6 consecutive budgets as finance minister. Now, she is in an unenviable position despite that, because when it comes to budgets, everyone wants everything. But now that the proverbial cat is out of the bag, it is time to discuss the hits and the misses. And to do that, we are joined by Mr. Amitabh Kant. A very good morning to you and welcome, Mr. Kant.
Thank you. Great pleasure.
Before we get into specifics, let's just quickly, do a bit of self-assessment. Would you like to sort of, share your initial thoughts with us?
Well, I think the budget is progressive. It shows a great amount of fiscal discipline, and it's growth oriented. And I think it lays a lot of focus on employment. To that extent, I think the budget also lays down the roadmap for the next 2-3 decades of India's growth strategy. And I think the roadmap for the Viksit Bharat in 2047.
Right. And special emphasis was on job creation, because that is one problem that India has been dealing with for a while. The economic survey, which came a day before the budget, pointed out that India needs to create about 8 million jobs on an annual basis. So the provisions made in the budget, do you see that kind of impact being created year after year going forward?
So, there are several employment related schemes here. There's a scheme where for employers, you give 3,000 rupees for a period of 2 years. There is another scheme where for manufacturing, you benefit both the employer and employee. And there is a third scheme where you are paying the 1 month's salary of employees. In addition to that, there are several schemes relating to skilling. There are schemes relating to women development. So there is an emphasis on employment. There's an employment linked incentive in this budget. But my view is that employment is created by growth. If economy grows, jobs will be created. Employment is created by manufacturing, and it's very important for India to create good quality jobs. So the focus on a range of other areas of growth, infrastructure, tourism, MSMEs, all this should in the long run accelerate the pace of our growth, and that should create jobs. Jobs are created not by government, jobs are created by the private sector. And my hope and my belief is that the private sector capex will kick in, and that will create jobs as India moves forward. But it's a budget which is hugely focused both on growth and employment. And if there's one emphasis in this budget, it is on job creation.
Right. And talking about capex, Mr. Kant, I did a bit of a comparison. In 2019, India's capex, all of the elements added together, was around roughly 5 lakh odd crores. And in 2024, adding up everything, we're looking at a figure which is in the vicinity of 15 lakh crores. It has gone up 3x in a matter of 5 years. Interestingly, the tax collection doubled during this same period, from 13 lakh crores to 26 lakh crores, which means the government has ended up, not spending this money on administrative costs and, on other things, but has taken out 10 lakh crores, as much as at least 10 lakh crores, and added to the budget in the form of capex. That said, that clearly shows what the government's thirst is. But as far as private capex is concerned, we haven't seen the kind of response from the industry that the government has been expecting to.
So, the heavy lifting in the last 3 budgets has been done by the government in terms of capex. It's taken it from 1% to about 3.4%. It's increased from the interim budget. Also, it has increased the outlay in this budget. It continues to spend money on capital expenditure. But, efficiency in the long run comes when infrastructure is created by the private sector. Efficiency in the long run comes when there is operation and maintenance by the private sector. And that's why the government has another scheme of asset monetization, that assets once created should be actually operated and maintained by the private sector. They continue to be owned, but they'll operated and maintained by the private sector. So my belief is that private sector capex is kicking in, and one of the hallmarks of this budget is that it's a steady, forward-looking budget, and therefore this growth of 8.2% should logically continue despite all the challenges which India faces in the global community. And if India continues to grow, then we will see private sector capex kicking in. It got impacted because of the COVID, but private sector growth will kick in. The budget, with its emphasis on employment, will lead, and the benefit given on the new tax slabs will put money into the hands of the middle class consumers, and therefore the consumption story of India should also grow. And that would really push for greater level of private sector investment in the coming months.
Yes, because for the last few years, what we've been noticing is that while the consumption of luxury goods at the top of the pyramid is increasing, at the bottom of the pyramid, the consumption story continues to remain skewed.
Yeah. So that's a function. See, consumption is a function of better jobs getting created. The challenge for India is that 46% of your population is dependent on agriculture. Agriculture creates poor quality jobs. Nowhere in the world such a large percentage of population is dependent on agriculture. Even in a country like China, the percentage of population in agriculture has come down to just 20%. So you need to take population away from agriculture, create good quality jobs in manufacturing, in infrastructure, in real estate. And I think that is what will happen now in the coming years.
Talking about that, one thing which everyone was hoping might, also be announced in the budget was perhaps addition to areas when it comes to PLI schemes. We didn't see that. Why do you think? What was the government's rationale to not add, other sectors?
I think that's the best thing the finance minister has done, is not to expand the PLI. The PLI objective was to create global champions. The objective was that production should rise year after year, year after year, year after year, year after year for 5 years. And we have already 14 sectors in the PLI scheme. We should not spread it thin. The objective should be not to expand manufacturing by PLI, but to make India a very efficient economy. Which would mean that you need factor reforms in terms of land, labor, make India the most efficient economy in the world, productively the most efficient economy. So I'm totally against the PLI scheme being spread thin, and I'm glad that the finance minister has been very, very careful and considerate as far as this. We first must make a success of the 14 schemes. It's done well in electronics, it's done well in a couple of sectors, but across the board, there is still time to demonstrate it's good and make India scrap rules, regulation, procedures, paperwork in the states, make India very easy and simple. PLI is not the answer for all of challenges which India faces.
Now, what the budget has done is that it has, instead of trying to appease everybody, which is to say, go for a populist budget, the budget has kept the long-term goals of the country in mind, and the finance minister's thrust throughout the last few budgets continues to remain so. So there is a certain continuity in the budget, despite the fact that the electoral performance of BJP and NDA wasn't as good in the recently held general elections as the previous government in 2019 and 2014.
So, this is a budget by a supremely confident government. This is a budget which is long-term in its perspective. This is a budget for growth and jobs. This is a budget which is not populist. This is a budget which is aimed at making India grow at high rates of 8 to 9% per annum for 3 decades. It goes much beyond the economic survey. And it is a budget which aims at creating good quality infrastructure and is yet very fiscally prudent and very responsible budget, because the finance minister, at the end of the day, the finance minister has to be very fiscally sensible, not to have great fiscal deficit, which will lead to inflation in the long run. So she's brought down the fiscal deficit from 5.9 to 5.1 in the interim, and here for 4.9%, and says that it will come down to 4.5% in the next year, and come down, have a glide path beyond that. And that, to my mind, is what is really truly the job of a great finance minister. And so, in my view, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has done a great job as a finance minister to be fiscally prudent.
But Mr. Kant, that means the middle class's anger in the short term is going to be one thing which the government will have to deal with. Because, I was going through Twitter threads yesterday, last night, and of course today morning as well. That there are complaints, and what middle class is saying, what they were expecting hasn't been met. But at the same time, the reason why perhaps it hasn't been met is because, for example, the government decided to take angel tax. That means ventures which were not viable for investors a day before are suddenly viable now, which means a lot more jobs will get created. But the government will have to do a very good job of communicating this to the electorate.
So a lot has been done for the middle class. You've have the new tax slabs, which will put money, 17,500 rupees in the hands of the middle class. That's number one. Number two, middle class grows when India grows. If India doesn't grow, where does the middle class go? So India is going to grow with this budget. And when India grows, you can't look at budget from the perspective of lower middle class, upper middle class, middle class. You have to look at the budget in its totality to say that India will grow. And when India grows, the middle class grows in a very big way. And that is what is going to happen with this budget. And I think that's how we should look at it. But one of the big landmarks of this budget is the scrapping of the angel tax, which has been there for 12 years, and we've been trying very hard to get it removed. So the finance minister has been bold, gutsy, courageous in removing this angel tax, which should not have been brought in the first instance in 2012. It was imposed 12 years back, and by Mr. Pranab Mukherjee, and it has impacted, startups from starting in India, startups being committed to India, startups growing in India. This aspect of tax, terrorism, all that used to come in, and therefore this is, to my mind, a very good move.
Right. And another thing in the budget which was very interesting was, of course, that the finance minister spoke about that India will introduce a taxonomy for climate finance. Very interesting. Would you like to throw more light on that aspect?
So, the budget has a lot of focus on energy transition. It talks about, pump storage, which is very important for India. It talks about small modular reactors, the Bharat reactors, which is very important for India. It also talks about green taxonomy, which is important because only if you have green taxonomy, you are able to attract green funds. Otherwise, a lot of funding which comes in, doesn't come in for climate action. It comes in and is then termed as green financing, which it is not. So it's very important to define green taxonomy, which this budget talks about. So it's a good budget, and actually we should finish this green taxonomy work within the next couple of months and just put it in public domain.
And as far as the overall picture going forward is concerned, this was supposed to be the foundational budget for Modi 3.0. The finance minister has very successfully tried to strike the right kind of balance. But if, in your opinion, there are certain things which the government could have done better and has missed out on, what will those things be?
So, one of the things is they've created a venture fund for space. I think there should have been a venture fund, a fund of funds, rather a fund of funds for deep tech, a much bigger fund of 10,000 crore for deep tech, including space. So you could have covered many more sectors you could have covered AI, quantum computing, space, geospatial maps, all that. That, to my mind, was important. And the second thing I would say is that, while there is a lot of stress on urbanization, and it's a good budget for urban development, there could have been focus on cleaning up our cities. The municipal corporations, they lack the teeth, they lack the determination. Improving the air quality for citizens in our cities is very, very important. So I think these are 2 points I would like to say. And otherwise, the budget is very, very good.
Thank you for taking other time and talking to us, Mr. Kant.
Thank you. Thank you.